Welcome everyone who is joining our live event today on the occasion of International Democracy Day. Happy International Democracy Day from the Mile Project. My name is Vanessa and I work for Unity, an organization based in Brussels. We represent migrant entrepreneurs, or what we call new Europeans, people that have a background in a different country than maybe the one they've settled in. So we work on topics related to migration, inclusion, business and entrepreneurship. This event is presented to you by the MILE project. MILE stands for Migrant Integration Through Locally Designed Experiences. With me today, I also have colleagues that are working with me on this project. They are all not based in Brussels, they're based in different parts of Europe, which I'll tell you about in a bit. And that's also part of the MILE project. We work with different organizations from based in different countries, which allows us to get different perspectives, different local realities. We know that migration and inclusion can be a very unique experience, and it can vary depending on which city we look at, which area we look at, if it's a small town, a big town, which country. We cannot generalize the experience of migration and inclusion. And this also gives us a very interesting perspective to talk about democracy today. In particular, local democracy and local inclusion participation. We'll talk about what we mean when we speak about inclusive cities, inclusion through participation, what we mean when we say to involve a diverse population, for example, in decision-making processes. And today is a kind of chance for us to share a few of our ideas, exchange a few ideas, maybe also hear some comments and ideas from viewers. And I would say we get started. We have about an hour, and during this whole event, you can post any questions, any ideas you may have in the chat section you should have underneath the video that you're watching, or on the side somewhere. And I will switch to a different view so you can see who I'm with right now. Before I let them introduce themselves, I'll just share a few insights on the organizations that they're representing, and also it's a kind of snapshot, I would say, of the MILE project. So we have, for example, Richard, who is from ACH, which is a service provider for refugees in the UK, based in Birmingham. Razan, who is a member of the European Commission's migration expert group, and also based in Barcelona with her organization Qudwa, collective of Arabic-speaking migrants and refugees. Olga is joining us from Ioannina, the municipality of Ioannina, which is one of the municipalities on the MILE project. Seiran is, I believe, joining us from Norway, perhaps Oslo, I think, part of New Women Connectors, collective of migrant and refugee women. And last but not least, we have Chiara, who is, like Razan, based in sunny, I guess, Barcelona, part of the Autonomous University of Barcelona, and also the Transmedia Catalonia group, which is part of the university. And to give you sort of an idea of who we are and make it a bit more inclusive for anyone that might not be able to see us, I can quickly start by giving you a quick very brief presentation. So you know my name, Vanessa. I am sitting in Brussels in the office. Behind me I have a nice window with a bit of light, not too much light today. And I'm 30-ish years old, blonde hair, and today I'm wearing a kind of dark blue t-shirt. Richard, would you like to go next?
I'm Richard. I'm based in Bristol currently. I'm coming to you from a partially converted attic, which is painted in a nice blue, late 50s, wearing traditional professional business dress for the UK, which is not what we're wearing too often nowadays, post-pandemic. Just like enjoying the sunshine when I can.
Razan, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Razan, would you like to go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Razan. I'm originally Syrian. I'm in Barcelona at the moment in a kind of a converted office / bedroom, actually. That's the reality of working from home, I guess. I'm mid-30s. In my mid-30s, I have brown hair, and I have too many lights shining in my face because sunshine actually doesn't reach me in here. So, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Olga, would you like to go next?
Hello, I'm Olga Macready. I'm based in Ioannina, Greece. I'm 40 years old, light, let's say brunette, and I'm wearing blue glasses. I'm really proud and happy to be here with you, and thank you all for the opportunity of meeting you.
Thank you, Olga. Very nice glasses, by the way. Seyran, would you like to go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Seyran. I'm speaking to you from Oslo, Norway, where the sun not always shines so bright, and when we're going towards the dark autumn again. But I have also help and support of other types of lights around me. So I'm in my early 30s, 30-ish, brown eyes and red hair. So I can easily be found anywhere. And I'm really happy to be here. I'm sitting here on a midday here and having a white shirt in a sort of home/office area, I would say.
Nice, thank you. And last but not least, Chiara.
Yes, hi everyone, and happy International Democracy Day to all of you. So my name is Chiara. I'm from Italy, as you can probably guess from my accent, and I have short brown hair and green eyes. And behind me there is a bookshelf with at the top a potus. I'm really proud of, actually. And thank you for having me here today.
Thanks for being here. Thanks. Okay, it was a good kind of snapshot of all of you, and I think we can get started into a few questions. The idea is today that we have a chat between each other, which we often do. We often, I guess, meet and discuss these kind of topics, and it's a nice occasion today, I would say. I know you also have other things going on today related to democracy, and in general, you do a lot of work in this area. You have all different expertise and different experiences on this topic. So it'll be, I think, interesting for us to kind of have this discussion. And to maybe start, since we are talking about inclusion and democracy, and these are sort of words that I think every one of us might see a bit differently, so we have different views. I would love to start with a more general question on what do we actually mean when we talk about inclusive cities, or what do we imagine an inclusive city to be, and what could help to maybe look at this topic of inclusion, participation at the local level. Maybe, Chiara, you would like to share sort of some ideas that you may have. I know that sort of being on or one of the research partners of the project, you have to sometimes have this kind of broader but also narrow view on the local situation. Would you like to go first?
Yes. Thank you for the question. And actually, from my point of view, but also the point of view of Transmedia Catalunya, when we think about an inclusive city, we think about a city where everyone can have a space, a moment, or an environment to express needs, to talk, to promote ideas, to promote ideals, and to have the time and the space to say what he, she, or they think about the city. And when we say that an inclusive city, in a city where everyone have access to these facilities, for everyone, we mean people of different ages, people with different disabilities, people coming from different countries, refugees, migrants, people with a different class, people with different socio-cultural backgrounds. But of course, the question is, how can we try to promote an inclusive city? And I was thinking about that, and probably I was trying to find an answer to this really difficult question. And probably one can be that we should wear intersectionality glasses to try to promote local spaces where everyone can express. And in order to wear these intersectionality glasses, this will allow us to see and reach more people, and promote events where everyone can have a voice. But we need intersectionality glasses to reach different types of people with different types of ages, with different social and cultural background. Wearing these glasses can allow us to promote an event where we do not use ethnocentrism, for example. So we consider different types of conceptions that different people have. And I wanted to give an example. The other day I had a meeting about what is activism for me and what is activism, for example, for another woman I'm collaborating that is from Nigeria. And our conception of activism, it's really different. So my idea of activism, it's completely different from her ideas, for example. If I just use my cultural background and my Eurocentric approach to see activism, I may not see other types of activism, for example. So when I think about an inclusive city, I see this inclusive city as a space where everyone can express and where we use a non-Eurocentric approach to reach everyone.
I like the idea of the intersectionality glasses. I don't want to surprise you, Razan, by passing on the word to you, but I was just wondering, since Chiara mentioned a different view on activism, has your view, for example, on activism changed? Like, would you say that different environments have shaped you, or in general, would you agree with Chiara? Would you add anything to that, and from your personal perspective, maybe on how you view, for example, democracy, or how do you view activism?
100%, absolutely. I've always been open about it, actually, that, I'm a migrant. I've been a migrant for around 12 years now, and I've recently got the Spanish nationality. And my ideas of how life should be actually have changed throughout that journey. And you kind of, life kind of takes you and gives you different priorities in each stage of your life. I think, and and also in, coming from different cultural backgrounds, understanding what's happening around you. So every person has their own battles, I think, and that's why, they might be battling something internal, could be cultural biases, etc., or it could be external, like, status, settlement. So everyone is is fighting their own battles, and I think that also kind of changes how they feel about, what democracy means to them. Does it actually mean something? At one point, it didn't mean anything to me, to be honest. And I think it took a major life change for it to start to mean something. So I 100% agree with Chiara. I think that we do need to wear those glasses, and we need to maybe be wary about our communication as well, how we communicate in this context, I guess, in the industry. Unfortunately, I can call it an industry because it is. I was out of it in 2019, and now I'm completely immersed. So I think that in order for us to actually reach more people, to kind of give meaningful participation to everyone, we do need to be wary about how we communicate about it, how we describe it, because different, not only the shape of it, but also the words that we use to describe it actually mean different things to different people. So I'm 100% on board with the idea. Yeah.
Very good points. Richard and Seyran, do you have any thoughts on this? Could you be your personal perception of democracy, or if it's been affected by your work, by your environment, the city you live in, maybe? Richard, would you like to add a few thoughts?
I think as you can see in the UK at the moment, we've got the Queen passed away last week, and we're now seeing like protocols that are 1,000 years in the making that haven't been used for 70 years, and that's like part of the democracy of the UK. And it's like looking at that and understanding what that actually means and how that affects me, because I'm not a subject, I'm a citizen. But then there's a monarchy which has a sort of subject sort of focus to it. So the democracy component, I think, is very much around actually being just able to choose and be part of a democratic system. And that's with the individuals that we're working with. They're coming from so many different systems of government. Very few have had the luxury of democracy. So when we sit sort of as Chiara was to say about that Eurocentric approach, the inclusion, the democracy, they're just very, very abstract terms. So what we've been doing in the work in ACH is actually trying to unpick what those terms mean and actually how you can, how the relationship with words like inclusion actually change from going through the asylum process through to actually gaining citizenship 4 or 5 years later, I think, and actually being able to find the way to work with individuals so that they can develop their own relationship with the structures that exist to represent them.
Very good points. Sarah, what do you think so far? Would you agree with everything? Would you add?
I would say I can echo all the things that you said, and also add to it that coming from the perspective also from human connectors and how we work with also with the meaningful participation, how to make mechanisms as a participation is not only to close spaces, but also to how to create those mechanisms in a city that can go from parts of citizens who, especially from migrant background, to be involved and to engage. To me, when I think about what makes a city inclusive, I immediately think about a city with a purpose at its center, a city that's for everyone, going from we talk a lot about having human-centered approach, but I think we also need to add the purpose-centered approach, because we often talk about preventative approaches. I can say examples such as many cities today, they lack the information regarding rights, but there's a lot of information about rules and regulation of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And that's especially there's this need of supportive information about how we can access those mechanisms for the basic rights. We need to discuss those based on our here we discussed it based on our experience from new connectors and the network representative. I think especially having that we need to put the service at the core of the building of the city as a city resilience, as a citizens resilience. How can we cater to those needs?
And I was also thinking, because I mean, coming from your perspective and working with a collective of migrant and refugee women, I mean, Chiara was already mentioning the intersectionality lens or view. Is that something you find beneficial also in your work and your approach, dealing with, for example, topics like inclusion? Do you see sort of also, or is it, let's say, is it easy or difficult for you to transmit the kind of the value of having diversity in a democracy and having different perspectives? Or is it sometimes also, do you reach a barrier where you say, okay, we have really different views. Our perspective in Youth Women Connect it's not understood, or for example, your personal perspective?
I can say this, that so it's a first step regarding bringing inclusiveness into democracy to first of all talk about what are your rights as a citizen. That's our first step, but into going and gaining this understanding that this is an information that we think everyone should know about, and that we are working on promoting basic human rights, promoting rights that especially women of migrant background that often haven't heard about these different rights, and it's quite new to indulge and to understand all the different rights that is in a new city. It would be the same as if I go to a new city, if I go to a new place, there's always new rules and regulations. But I would say that the perspective would be different, but to understand that yes, I know about my basic rights. We need to discuss this and to promote also the challenges and barriers that especially has for women of migrant background who is in a position of having other challenges as well in addition. So yes, it is often sort of added to everything else we're working on, but I think it's the first step of accessing inclusiveness in the democracies to also have the knowledge and have the capacity and resilience. And that's why I said it in the initial part, is that to build those mechanisms of not only talking about what's the different regulations, but to talk about what's your opportunities, what's your possibilities in this new city you're coming to. How can we create that platform to go from an approach of preventing a lot of things from happening to making a lot of possibilities happen.
So I guess also one of the lessons we're learning with Mile, or we've learned over the last few months, is that we can't assume. We don't know always what the needs are. We might think that we know our needs, of course, mostly. We might know the needs of the people in our community, but it's very hard for us, obviously, to guess, and we shouldn't, I think, guess the needs or the expectations or priorities of others. And maybe this could be a good point to discuss a bit more the needs of the communities we're working with, we may be representing or connecting with. One of the needs, I think you already mentioned in a sense, I guess, will be the access to information. It seems to be that that's quite a sort of an important and crucial part of being part of a community, of being part of democracy. Would there be any other needs or sort of any other sort of urgent priorities that you think we or policymakers should pay more attention to?
I guess one of the parts of in being able to also fully engage in the democracy part is also especially paying attention to the rights to basic rights, such as it takes a long time from getting access to work for many migrants, and once they start to get access to work, they start to pay their full taxes and equal to all citizens. But there's a long waiting time from they get the right to work and they get to start to pay the taxes to also have the right to vote. So I guess to also cater to the on the political engagement and for change of policy, I think that's an area to not underestimate that there's a lot of will to engage, but the waiting time is quite long for many different groups.
Razan, I see you nodding. Would you? So I guess you would agree. Would you add anything to that, to the basic needs, priorities that we should pay more attention to?
I mean, I definitely agree with what Sairan is saying, and there is a massive kind of gap between, the right to work and to pay the taxes and the right to vote. But it also, and it's something that we're trying to do in our section of the project in Spain, is to promote different ways for democratic participation. And I think something that needs to be a priority is proactive outreach, because what we said, our idea of activism or our level of involvement is very different. And I think when you talk about specific, I never say vulnerable group, but I always say made vulnerable by the system. So the made vulnerable groups, they probably have different priorities than what we do. That's why proactive outreach is an absolute priority. It's something that we've seen even creating the event for later today. There's definitely a lack of communication between the governments and the different groups that represent that community. So, and also the lack of spaces, and even a lot of governments or a lot of cities say that, we have open spaces, but that doesn't mean that they're invited spaces. There needs to be proactive outreach to all the different groups. That's on one part, and the second part, I think there needs to be spaces where communities are built rather than, so we move from service provision to community building. That means spaces where all the groups, migrant, refugees, locals with different needs, actually get together and face the problems of the future together. And I think that it really, if it's catered by the government, can make a massive difference in the inclusion and kind of to avoid, the stereotypes, to avoid the discrimination. I want to say to be anti-discriminatory, basically, is to actually create the community in that format, is that we are building the city for everyone, for the future of everyone. Something that we see in Spain, there's a housing crisis, there's an employment crisis. Again, the locals have different priorities, actually. So I think if we see it from this way, it'll definitely help everyone to feel not only included, but also invited, but also to feel that they have different democratic channels to voice their opinions, not only the vote, and also to feel that their voice matters. I think that's also a massive kind of like emotional stimulant, I want to say, to actually raise the voices when you feel that you are being heard. So catering those spaces is definitely needs to be a priority, I believe.
Before I see if maybe Chiara or Richard would have some thoughts, we have one question regarding these spaces, which I find quite interesting because it's about how to create some safe space, protected from the authorities, that can often be seen by migrants as hostile. And it's interesting because I guess in Mile, we're trying to create spaces where they collaborate, so where they come together. But it's indeed true that we, I guess, also need these spaces that are away from the authorities, where there's spaces to meet, there's spaces to discuss. How would you see this need for a safe space? This question can be directed to all of you. Do you see that happening, for example, in your city or through your community, and the challenges in creating these safe spaces? It's not an easy question. I think when I think about Brussels, for example, I do see actually a lot of spaces that have been created by different groups. I imagine there are groups that have not felt heard in different political processes, in discussions, and they've created these spaces. I just think sometimes it's, on the one hand, we need these safe spaces. On the other hand, the risk is maybe that they remain disconnected from the larger discussion, and that's maybe the overall problem, or not problem, but dilemma.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I thought maybe Chiara has accessibility perspective, but
I'll just mention before that is that that's, I mean, 100% true, and we've seen like a lot of kind of informal collectives being created just because they probably share certain burdens, I want to say, and we've seen it being created, but there is no channel for them. They're still disconnected from the authorities, and I believe that's where grassroots organization, migrant-led organization, or specific organizations or NGOs that can actually be the intermediary between these collectives and these communities and the authorities. They can come very handy in these situations. The only thing is that they need to be empowered to keep fostering these communities in these creations. And I'm very vocal about this as a migrant-led organization, and that is completely community-based. Once we started to get fundings, European fundings or whatever, we started to lose that connection with the community because it's never a priority. For example, kind of cultural meetings or any meetings for entertainment are not something that we can easily fund or justify. And we are, with little resources, we're kind of limited in what we can do, unfortunately. So I think, and there's obviously also a model between between the authorities, migrant-led organizations, and the grassroots, and also the communities. But there needs to be an empowerment to foster these spaces in order for us to also be sure that these organizations, these representatives are truly representative, are still representative of these communities and these collectives. So again, I go back to the idea of community building. I think that grassroots and migrant-led organizations are absolutely key actors in this connection with the authorities. They can create that kind of translation between the jargon of the authority, but also the needs of the community to be properly communicated. That's something that needs to be fostered. It's not easily fostered with European fundings.
Indeed. Yeah, Karen.
Yes, so I wanted to say that I fully agree with Razan, and I think that the question is really interesting. And I wanted to give an example that came to my mind regarding safe space, because in one of the projects we are doing, we are working with sex trafficked women, for example. And actually, the safe space for them, it's really hard to be identified because, for example, the police is the person that will identify you as an illegal migrant, but it's also the person that can identify you as a possible victim of sex trafficking and can give you the possibility to receive services, for example. So I fully agree with Razan when she says that in this type of environment, when it's really hard to identify how association, in this case, I'm thinking about the police, can help you, we need migrant-led organizations. And in our case, it was really important to have a migrant-led organization created by ex-sex trafficked victims that help us creating a connection, in which we also focus on the fact that the role of police that, for example, has a person, a policeman in Nigeria can be different from the role that has here in Catalonia, as well as social workers, or as well as psychologists, or as well as support for your family. So also the translation of meanings, the cultural translation of meanings, it's really, really important. And I think that I'm sorry because I really like Mile, so now I want to say something that I really like about Mile. I think that our strength is the fact we are an intercultural team with different migrant-led organizations, policymakers involved, and researchers involved. So we have different perspectives, and it's not just one. So we have different perspectives in terms of cultural perspective, but also in terms of political and social background. So I think that in order to create safe spaces, we really need intercultural team and multicultural team that can guide us and that we can develop together a sort of intercultural vocabulary that can support us in the activities we want to do. But thank you for the question.
Thanks also for mentioning Mal. It's true that that's one of the benefits I would also see, and I think one of our aims is to. I mean, in the end, we want policies to be designed, for example, with migrants and with refugees. We don't want policies about them that they haven't been part of, and I think that idea can also translate in a lot of many ways. And I also agree that our views must change constantly. I think by what we hear from other perspectives, and at least that's what I feel is happening. Also, it's a process. That will constantly kind of evolve with the different perspectives. And it's useful also that all of us, I think, work on different projects. We have also insights from other projects that might not be Mile. I don't know, Richard, if you would also like to add your views. I mean, in a sense, when we talk about safe spaces and ACH also being a service provider, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, started by providing also housing initially for refugees. Maybe you can explain a bit more and what your thoughts are on the topic of safe spaces.
So originally, we're just providing accommodation for refugees, and then very soon realised sort of some of the issues that we're talking about today. It's if you follow the money for funding, you move away from those that you're trying to help. So their voice never comes into everything, but you always know what their needs are, because when you're doing funding applications, the people who are making the grants don't actually know the needs of the human beings anyway. That they're already sort of 2 or 3 steps removed from what's actually happening. So what we've been trying to do all along is actually have enough in reserve and do enough research. So we've regularly got focus groups going on, or with our tenants, our work is with each tenant, it's around about 9 months to 12 months of sort of support, taking them from a resettlement phase through to being able to at least begin to start to thrive. in the UK. So as we've gone through, well, currently we have 41 different nationalities of refugee. Each of those require different provisions to be able to settle. And as Karen was saying, just being able to use the police as a friend, it's like in the UK, you can go up to a police officer and ask for something. In many other countries, that's not something you ever do. Looking for advice, and that we had a project during the pandemic helping to support entrepreneurs who weren't accessing the free government money because they didn't trust the whole process of going to local authority to get money from the government because they didn't know what would happen as a result. So what we've been looking at as much as possible all the way through is actually how you increase the amount of knowledge that individuals have to be able to make choices so that actually they can become part of democracy, the democratic process, as they become strong enough to want to become part of the democratic process. And that's meant we've worked on a number of European projects, Erasmus projects, where we're looking to professionalize the refugees that we're working with, like the migrant workers. So actually ensuring that they've got a really good set of knowledge that they can work in with their own communities, rather than the knowledge only being able to individuals when they make an appointment with that service. So looking at always where we can create, so we've got courses where we're providing information, advice and guidance qualifications, so that actually those with the lived experience actually have a qualification to be able to use the lived experience. And it's those types of approaches that I've been working now with the communities, ethnic minority group communities, since about 2004. And you can see those groups where more knowledge has been made, so that understanding the rights and being able to use the rights. Nowadays, there's more individuals are actually councillors or actively lobbying MPs, and those other communities where there hasn't been that support, they're still very passive and not part of the democratic agenda.
Thanks. Thanks for the additional points. I see also we've unfortunately lost Olga from Ioannina. She might be back. It is in the end technology, you never know. I would, we do have someone from Ioannina, not live, but I have a kind of 2-minute brief video, some food for thought, let's say, on democracy from the mayor, Moses Elisif of Ioannina. I mean, now Olga would have been good to correct me. I think Ioannina is northwest in Greece. I will play the video. You will be able to rest your vocal cords for 2 minutes. And then maybe we can talk a bit more about afterwards about the connection between municipalities and migrant communities, and perhaps also some sort of things that we're trying to implement through Miles and best practices. Yeah, so we have about 20 minutes left, which gives us enough time. So I shall play.
National Democracy Day is meant to encourage voting, participation, civic engagement, dialogue, community building, and reflection on the role of public service in your life and the lives of others. It is as much a process as a goal, and only with the full participation of and support by the international community, national governing bodies, civil society and individuals can the ideal of democracy be made into reality to be enjoyed by everyone, everywhere. Healthy representative democracies consolidate and survive only if the political governance firstly represents the majority of citizens, and secondly, but equally important, if with its choices, its governance attempts to approach the concept of the common good within the framework of a powerful state of law. In any case, democracy is vulnerable and always in the balance, and it becomes more precarious when the citizens themselves, its solid foundation, stay away from its proceedings. Regardless of the reasons that citizens proclaim to avoid the voting procedure, when many seem unmoved to exercise the maximum right to participate in the political process, representative democracy loses the meaning of its first constituent. It's no longer representative. The inevitable consequence of abstinence is that the concept of law is equally injured. Only the majority of citizens can approach the concept of law and consequently democracy as a term and constitution. Hegel said that history teaches one that it teaches nothing. Indeed, history neither teaches nor repeats itself, but it certainly does not teach in an empty auditorium. History teaches when the auditorium is filled with an audience ready to listen, to learn, and make an example of it. But it teaches the most when the citizens are present.
No, that's the wrong view. I want another view. Oh, here we go. Yep, I think we're back. Apologies a little. Yep, okay. I think we could use that video, those remarks as maybe an encouragement to speak a bit more about cities. Cities play a role in the MILE project. Before we talk more about how that can look like, how engaging migrant and refugee communities, how we can put them in contact with municipalities and create a kind of ecosystem, let's call it, of collaboration. I would like to first talk about the cities we live in, just to keep it also practical. We all currently living in a city, or maybe more rural, but we have a connection to the city we live in. So I would like to just quickly, as a kind of a breaking up between the different questions, could you tell me one thing that you love about the city you live in, and one thing, I don't want to say hate because hate is a too strong word, that you would like to change? I can start. Let's say Brussels is my city because I have been living in Brussels for 6 years, so I've gotten to know the city quite well. One thing I love about Brussels, I would say, and this does fit in the topic, but diversity. I think it's a really diverse city. I think it's in rankings, Brussels is usually quite high up. It's got a lot of nationalities that come together in Brussels. But at the same time, the thing that I would like to change, but I wouldn't know how, is indeed to connect the communities more. It feels sometimes that we live in our own bubble, and we often call, obviously, Brussels also the EU bubble, because you have that bubble and you have different bubbles. Your answers, by the way, don't have to be connected to the topic. They can be very random. You can tell me your favorite food place, and the thing you would change is, I don't know, the rubbish system. But that just came to mind, I guess, because we were talking about diversity. Richard, any thoughts on your city? What do you love and what would you change, if you could change anything?
Because I'm in Bristol. I live actually just outside of Bristol in a small village, so I sort of tap in and out of Bristol quite a lot. So it's good to go in, explore the diversity, explore the history. It's got good accessibility out to London as well, which is my favourite city, and it's easy to get to Birmingham and around. So it's good for moving around. I think it's because of its smallness. It has a very large student population, and it does spend a lot of time living in its own bubbles. So it does need to get out a bit more at times.
Okay. Razan and Chiara, I mean, you're both in the same city. You could also choose a different city if you like, but you might have different things that you like and would like to change. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I mean, I love Barcelona. Firstly, I'm from a Mediterranean city in Syria, so just being on the Mediterranean is just something that gives me massive energy. I lived in the UK for like 8 years, and I just couldn't hack it. I think that's probably my favorite thing. One thing that I would, I don't know, I don't want to say a change, but I want to hack. I want to understand how to figure it out. Is that I feel that there's a bit of a paradox in Barcelona where, people are there's a massive kind of like national feeling of being Catalan. They want to save their language. Almost everything, it's just a very kind of intrinsic and very understandable kind of emotion, but that sometimes hinders accessibility to information. So a lot of things that we do or that are kind of directed at kind of migrants or refugees are only kind of distributed in Catalan, or the government system, for example, happens online. That's also only available sometimes I say. So it's a bit difficult for newcomers, for example, to kind of feel the ease of getting information, to access the information. And I feel that there's a paradox between like trying to save their language, but then at the same time being a very welcoming city, actually. And there's a lot of activism happening. Catalan people are very, very kind of active in especially in refugee and migration issues. But I feel that there's a bit of a paradox, and it's a bit difficult to kind of resolve, I guess. So that would be my.
Interesting. Chiara, I think, how long has it been that you've been living in Barcelona? If indeed Barcelona is the one you would like to say one thing or two things about.
I will go for Barcelona, and actually I fully agree with Razan with the fact that in Barcelona there is a lot of activism, and I think that one of the main reasons I moved here is for that, because it's really alive in terms of migrant-led organizations that are organizing themselves to fight for a specific, for example, for housing, or lots of feminist organizations of different types. So this is one of the things that I really love about Barcelona. One thing that actually I don't like is the access to bureaucracy. And I am an European person, so I had a lot of privilege in terms of accessing bureaucracy. But it's really hard to understand how to do a document, how to reach the right people. And now we had in Italy, we will have the election soon. So the process of receiving the documents to vote was horrible. And so simplify bureaucracy would be something for me really important that Barcelona should take into account, because it's really a barrier. So
such a good point. I can relate that in Brussels, and indeed, from a privileged perspective, it's still complicated. So you can only imagine how it is for someone from a non-European country. Seyran, give us Oslo. I've never been to Oslo, by the way.
I'll talk a bit about Oslo, which is perhaps I always say we are sort of a European country at the same time that we're not fully engaged as well. So I guess one of the things which I do like with Oslo is the mobility. It's a capital that you can access quite easily and for everyone as well. The inner city now it's accessible by bicycles everywhere, and you can get to most parts of the city within an hour. So it has quite a good accessibility, and the mobility part has been really interesting to see the past years. We started with this project of no cars in the city, which in the beginning was quite a lot of attention and people not wanting this to happen. But now we do see quite a big change in the city where people are using the spaces much more. They've created lots of areas for dining, for other sort of parks and recreation areas that previously were parking spaces or other facilities, and people are really using much more of the city as a cultural space, and there's a lot of activities going on. So it's been nice to see that development. So I've lived in Oslo for the past 15 years.
Okay.
But still, one of the things I would like to hack it's access the labor market. Because most of the people also coming here and wanting to explore, want to join. Still, most of the labor market in Norway, it's the language barrier for many of them, and the access to the jobs that might be sort of in English speaking or in other languages. It still takes time. So I would say we have a lot of sort of opportunities also for activism, but also still those opportunities they still would be that it would be in the local languages. So many that come in the beginning, it takes a lot of time until they get engaged. So from the space that they can engage, and like we're talking about here, to promote activities, it takes much more of a time for them to actually start to engage, unless they have a level of Norwegian, which sort of it also takes time to learn. So I would definitely to have more sort of spaces, but also the cultural diversity to flourish, and to have more access to the language learning skills about.
Interesting. When you say mobility, that reminded me that this Sunday is actually car-free Sunday in Brussels, which is a really, really great invention. They only do it once a year, though, which is such a pity. And unfortunately, it's and I think, I mean, that's the great thing about Brussels. And then again, we have the downside. It's probably going to be raining on Sunday, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The bike-free, the car-free Sunday will be used. So, yeah.
The car-free sort of project was something that was quite long-standing, but interesting in terms of how the spaces are made. So some parts have been recreated together with the citizens, but all the other parts have sort of developed naturally. Sort of people have just taken on the streets, and they've sort of created it, and then they've asked for permission, and things have started to develop. So it's you're right track.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking about activism too, at least in Brussels, maybe also other cities. I don't know how it is in Barcelona or Bristol, but there's actually a sort of bike activism here. There's regular sort of rallies with bikes where it's a kind of takeover of the streets, and it's interesting to see how, you know, activism translates in the different areas. Before we have not that much time left, about 10 minutes, a bit less. I'd still like to talk a bit more about possible tools, possible solutions, how we can connect better between different actors, may it be municipalities, service providers, research teams, and migrant refugee groups. We have a few experiences already from the MAL project. You might also have a few more experiences from other projects. So the stage where we're at, just to explain to someone who doesn't know MAL and where we are, we started in January. It's a 2-year project. And I would say it was around June, we organized focus groups. I think someone before mentioned, I think it was Richard who was also mentioning focus groups in the context of a different project. So we held focus groups in the 4 municipalities that are partnering on the MILE project. Unfortunately, now we don't have our Joannina representative here, but some of us were involved in the focus groups, and I wasn't physically there, but I read the reports and found them very interesting. That it was, I mean, maybe also talking about safe spaces. You might correct me, the ones that were there, if it felt like a safe space to you, what made it maybe feel like a safe space, and if you think, what kind of takeaways maybe would you have? I'm kind of eyeing Razan right now because I know she was in one of them. I'm not quite sure if anyone else would like to just, give their view. But would you like to start, Razan, and give a few ideas on focus groups in general or how they worked for MILE?
Absolutely. So we did a focus group in the municipality of Ripollet, which is a municipality near Barcelona. It's not Barcelona, it's Central. So we were, and I'll talk about barriers because we have to be a bit transparent about it. It was actually difficult to get participants because I feel that I want to say focus groups are extremely, extremely important. However, I think that it's a bit transactional, and maybe we can approach it in a different way. And this is what I felt kind of was needed. So it was very interesting because we did it in collaboration with an organization that works with refugees and migrants in Ripollet. and they were able to kind of rally a few, particularly women. So I was also very extremely happy that they were all they were women, and to be honest, it was a bit difficult to engage them at the beginning. Like I said, because I feel that, just the concept of, oh, we're the municipality, we want you to come and give us everything that you need, and then we'll never tell you what we're going to do with it, with the information that we collect. I think that's quite a one-way transactional kind of interaction, and I feel that we can do better. But it was very interesting because when they saw that I was there, I'm a migrant. I spoke, a couple of them were Syrian. I spoke Arabic. Obviously, I could translate because they couldn't translate, and then it turned into a very interesting conversation. At the beginning, you'd think, oh well, I don't know if they talk about these topics, about specific topics, and they had a lot to say. They had a lot to say. But obviously they didn't know what to do with the information that they had. They did speak about it in an internal kind of way in their community, and I go back to the word community because that's really important. They do talk about it, but they literally don't know what to do with this information, or with their requests, or the problems that they face, or the discrimination that they face actually. So it was very interesting how it transformed into this kind of like a bit of a safe space where, we were able to kind of collect a lot of information. But I do feel that the loop it's not really a loop yet. So it'd be interesting to see how we can close that loop and how we can kind of keep more people engaged with the municipality, and to kind of truly kind of gives them that power, right? Or that kind of outlet of, okay, how do you self-organize? How do you, if you have specific problems, well, do you know how many people face those problems? If it's too many people, well, maybe there's something that you can do about it. And it was very interesting to see that this information was actually new to them. So I feel that, like I said, that's a massive part of why we're always talking about proactivity and outreach, because there are a lot of informal spaces that are probably made safe by the people that are in them. However, they're completely disconnected, like you said, Vanessa. So there needs to be a connection. I don't want to say communication channels because it feels there needs to be an incorporation and encompassing of these spaces, of these communities, of these collectives, informal or formal, in a true collaborative form. I feel. So it was very interesting actually, but truly, like, there needs to be a way to for them to see what happened with the information that they provided. I feel that will give them a lot of encouragement. And will make them even more engaged with the municipality, but also with other organizations, and hopefully maybe self-organize.
Indeed, I see what you mean when you say the loop is not closed, and I guess that's also one of our goals, to find a way to close that loop or the gap. And actually, just reminded me that at some point, I think it was a few months ago, I was speaking to someone. She was from Lisbon, and a different project was project in Lisbon, including involving refugees in different social projects. And when she heard about Mile, she said, indeed, it's the problem with this transaction that she feels like we want the knowledge, that they give us your knowledge, and then there needs to be a sort of a step after that. How do we continue from there? And one idea, I think, I don't know if it was implemented there, but was to actually hire also refugees or migrants as advisors, in a position where it's maybe even a more fair transaction. But I'm sure there are different formats, and I think that's one of the goals, to find ways to make it more inclusive. Richard, I think you have a thought on that.
Yeah, because what we're finding with the focus groups is that they're quite useful for, say, getting a feeling of the current lived experience of what the current refugee migrant customer wants. It always gets sort of like shaped by those who've got lived experience from the past, who are sort of now the experts on shaping systems. And that data, that information, it's that snapshot. So if you look at academic papers, there's a whole theorizing around like interactions with 50 people, which are then taken and go into policy. So what I've started to look at is non-fungible tokens and crypto wallets. So you actually take that transaction further, but put the control of the data and the information with the individual, and you actually allow an exchange. So you can like provide loyalty bonuses, like subsidized access to swimming pools or things like that, in return for continued provision of data. So that way you're actually, instead of just having that single snapshot in time, so we met a population group a month ago, and we're now designing for the next year on the basis of that single interaction. We may have like further interactions to iterate the service design itself, but that's still we have to get those people into a space to then find out what they want, rather than having a system that goes, keep talking. Because if you go to, if you're a car manufacturer, you have car dealerships, and in those car dealerships, or now it's online, the customer is always picking and choosing what they want their car to look like. Whereas what we've done is go talk to somebody, go, do you want a car? Yes, we need a car. And then that's the end. So non-fungible tokens, I believe, is going to be quite a significant way forward. Now trying to work out how to turn that into a project, but I've already started working with University of Bristol to discuss how I can shape that going forward. But then, it's that ability to constantly interact and shape, rather than just once every 2 or 3 months or every 2 or 3 years sort of thing.
Yeah. Interesting perspectives. Again, it's everyone has sort of different experiences and views, and there's so many different ways we can try and find solutions to this. Looking at time, we've kind of come to the end, but regarding this topic, I mean, also I know Sarah worked on developing sort of the guidelines for these focus groups, and also involved and familiar with this kind of exercise. But as a kind of last round of any final thoughts or comments, and you may also obviously use your speaking time to highlight any upcoming events that you might be involved with or organizing. Any final thoughts, how you found this discussion, if you're left with more ideas or less, or how you feel after this discussion. Share anything you like. I don't know, Sarah, maybe you'd like to go first, and then we'll close the loop.
Final thoughts for me, it comes down to how to deal with the city transitioning into a new really an era of new ways of collaborating. It's an era we're living in where the city governance is in transition, the central governance is in transition, but also organizations working on the outside is also so we're all trying to figure out this new way of co-creation across these different spaces. So I guess one of the most important things moving forward is to understanding the social impact that it has on finding the ways of working, and also being mindful that in terms of this transition times, it has a lot of impact also on the digitalization and the pace of change on the city governments.
Thank you for those last words. Chiara, would you like to share any final feelings, thoughts? Whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I was thinking that Mile kind of is teaching us, or I have this feeling that of course we should try to change the lens we're using, as I said at the beginning, because if we just use our Eurocentric lens, we will not perceive and catch needs. And so for me, one of the things that we should do is to try changing this approach. And I think that the intercultural teams we're involved in is helping us to do that. And also, it's not just about creating space per se. I think when we want to create spaces for local participation, we need to be careful of the language we use, of the channels we use to communicate to people, of the facilities we offer when we organize these kind of spaces, because maybe families want to join and have a voice in an event, but if we do not facilitate babysitting services, for example, in the patriarchal, I would say, context we are still living in, maybe moms would be out from the space of talking and expressing themselves, for example. So I think we need to be really careful and wear this intercultural lens. And of course, I think we should promote multicultural teams and try to work more on representation, because if I see myself represented in a municipality, I would probably feel more trust in reaching the municipality and see, okay, migrants are represented, for example, in this municipality. Maybe there is someone that experienced the same and can support me in a different ways. Because once happened to me, I was in a focus group. I'm not a migrant, in a different way, maybe a privileged one somehow. And it was full of migrant women, and they were telling me, Chiara, it's really hard for us to communicate with you because maybe you didn't experience the bureaucracy barriers that we did. And for me, I mean, I think that Mile is teaching us that we need more representation and more multicultural teams, and we should wear this intercultural lens a bit more. So I think that's... And Razan, if you want to invite the audience.
Good. Go on, Razan.
Definitely. I mean, to be honest, we did fall into that trap, and I'm fully aware of it. But it, again, like I said, I think it's very easy to fall into that, just because it's the status quo and it's how we do it. We want to be in between, you know, a professional in the industry to make sense for the, you know, for the probably government stakeholders or the bigger NGOs, but then. So we actually used different language, and I feel that we should have used you know, a more kind of community-based language. But we do have an event later today in Ripollet. It's particularly for the Democracy Day. It's inclusive democratic participation. That's what we called it. We should have called it something else. However, you know, we invited all the actors, and obviously everyone is invited. It won't be transmitted on Zoom, unfortunately, but follow us on social media. I'm sure that we're going to be you know, communicating about that. But we truly need to find better communication channels and better communication language. Again, because it feels like, you know, when you talk about democracy, if someone can't vote, maybe they're going to feel that they're excluded from it. So we do need to, you know, be careful about the words that we use, about the terminology, about the target audience, who is it for, and is it transactional? Is there something in it for them? Because again, you know, different people have different priorities. They're at different stages of their lives. They're probably on survival mode at the moment, so they're not on thrive mode. And they have to pick and choose how they spend their time, I believe. So we do need to be, you know, aware of that, and to make it very clear that what does this mean for them as well? Like, what are they getting out of it? So hopefully we'll learn. Obviously, I'm a migrant-led organization, but we're still learning as well. So we need to be open to kind of adapt and change and learn from all of these experiences.
Good points, very interesting points. Any final thoughts, Richard, before we...
I think with the work that I've been involved with, we created a sort of framework a few years ago called Rethinking Refugee. And that was specifically looking at the fact that as soon as you start talking about refugees as a group, you totally dehumanize everything that's going on. So in the UK, we have refugees, we teach them English, and then they can get an entry-level job, and then they can contribute to society. But as Razan goes, what that allows is for those individuals to always be on survival mode, never in a position where they can thrive. And it's when you're in that place where you can start to thrive, you can look around and go, I want to do something different. Survival, you're still going to be fighting to get the thing that you need, like the visa or your family reunion or your just a job. But so our Rethinking Refugee narrative is actually around allowing people to aspire and thrive. So bringing about the system changes that allow it to move from just that Maslow's hierarchy of need world of, just meeting basic functionality to shifting people forward to actually have careers, have the monies and that for choice. I think that's quite an important piece, just shifting the stereotype or moving away from the stereotype and bringing in all the dimensions that Chiara and others have spoken about.
Thank you. I've learned a lot today. I got a lot of really nice insights. I hope it was also useful for you, and I hope it was also useful for anyone watching. Thanks for the comments that we received and questions through the chat. I did see them. I'm glad it works. I wasn't quite sure. I think I hope this gave us food for thought for the rest of the day. Still, again, a happy International Democracy Day. We'll continue our work together, of course, and if you want to follow the MILE project, you will find us on various platforms. We have the website mile-project.eu. We're also on Twitter, on Facebook, etc. So you can find us, and you'll also find the other organizations that are involved. So have a nice afternoon, and hopefully see you all soon. Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you, Vanessa and
Bye-bye.
Unity, for organizing. Bye.
You're welcome. See you soon. Bye-bye.